Close your eyes and imagine the year 1350. There is no air conditioning, no ibuprofen, no running water, and absolutely no hazard pay. There is only work. Every job was a health risk. Every commute was a gauntlet of human waste and disease. But a few jobs, a terrifying few, were less jobs and more a direct, painful sentence to the grave. This is the definitive ranking of the worst jobs in medieval history. The grim and gritty jobs. Job 1. The tanner. The smell of rot. We start with the smell. You see, everyone wanted leather, but nobody wanted to make it. The job was the tanner. To turn raw hide into leather, you first had to remove the hair. The most effective method? Soak the hides in vats of water mixed with dog feces and human urine. But that's just the start. The hides then went into vats of strong acid made from rotted animal brains and tallow. Your work uniform was soaked in putrid biohazardous liquid. Your skin was constantly exposed to disease. Tanners were forced to live outside city walls because the stench of their work was so profound it could literally make people sick a mile away. You'd be permanently stained, both physically and socially. Job 2. The Leech Collector. The constant bleed. Up next is a job that was surprisingly common thanks to the popularity of bloodletting, the leech collector. Your job required you to wander into swamps, bogs, and stagnant ponds, the most disease-ridden places on Earth, to harvest medicinal leeches. And how did you catch them? You used your own legs. You waded into the water, let the leeches cling to your skin, and pulled them off when they were full. The consequence? You were constantly dealing with infected wounds, blood loss, and the diseases swimming in that water, from malaria to gangrene. A simple infection could end your career and your life. Job 3. The fuller, the urine specialist. This one is less about danger and more about the absolute horror of the past. Meet the fuller. Fullers were responsible for treating raw wool to make it soft, thick, and clean. To do this, they needed a chemical agent to break down the grease and oil in the wool. That agent was human urine. And not just any urine. They used large tubs of stale urine, often collected from public toilets, and then they had to stomp on the wool in the urine vats for hours a day to properly treat the fabric. You wouldn't last 5 minutes before the vapors from the ammonia-soaked vats made you vomit. You'd be unemployed, covered in old urine, and smelling worse than the tanner. The life-threatening risks. Job 4. The plague doctor, the death sentence. You probably recognize the chilling costume, but the reality of the plague doctor was far more horrifying than the mask. They weren't healers, they were accountants of death. Their job was to record the deaths, perform autopsies, and offer useless, barbaric treatments like rubbing chickens on the infected or slicing the black buboes open. The only protection was the mask, stuffed with herbs, which did nothing. Their mortality rate was astronomically high. You knew every single day that you were walking directly into an inescapable infection zone. The psychological toll alone would break you. Imagine being surrounded by constant, agonizing death, knowing you were utterly powerless to stop it. It was the quickest ticket to a premature grave. Job 5. The executioner, torturer, the psychological grind. While not always covered in filth, the executioner had a job that required a specific kind of mental and social death. They were the grim final act of the justice system. The job was paid well, but it came with total social ostracization. You were legally allowed to kill, but you were also legally untouchable, an outcast. Beyond the required brutal violence, the beheadings, the rack, the breaking wheel, the psychological toll was profound. You spent your life separated from normal society, unable to touch, talk, or interact with anyone but criminals and your family. Even if you had the stomach for the blood, you would not survive the profound, crushing loneliness and the absolute destruction of your soul. The absolute worst. Now we move into the abyss. You may have heard of the Gong Farmer or the night soil man. This is the job that defines medieval horror. A gong farmer was employed to clean out the septic pits, cesspools, and private vaults where all the human waste was collected. They could only work at night to minimize the smell to the city. They worked in pitch darkness, navigating the sludge and decay. The job was extremely dangerous because the buildup of methane and noxious fumes in those pits could cause the pit to explode or simply suffocate you. The death toll was grim. Many were poisoned by the air, or worse, they fell into the pit and drowned in the waste itself. Your body would be submerged in a suffocating, rotting coffin of human excrement. Job 7. The Scribe, Illuminator. Before we name the absolute worst job, here is a job that sounds great, but was actually a slow death. The scribe, or illuminator. You spent your entire life hunched over, working in poor lighting, leading to chronic back pain, crippling headaches, and near total blindness by age 30. But the true killer was the ink. The most vibrant colors, like the rich reds and greens used to illuminate manuscripts, were made from arsenic, lead, and mercury. You spent every day slowly ingesting heavy metals, leading to severe poisoning, madness, and a truly agonizing end. You would die for art. The worst job of all. The runner. The expendable. But the single worst job, the one that required the least skill and promised the most immediate brutal death, was simply the runner. When armies needed to communicate across battle lines, or when the king needed a message delivered through plague-ridden streets, they didn't send a noble, they sent the most expendable person they could find. Your salary was nothing. Your gear was non-existent. Your mission was impossible. Your risk of being killed by highwaymen, enemy soldiers, or an infectious disease was 100%. You had no glory, no social status. Your only purpose was to die for the message. Your life was simply a variable in the king's communication plan. That truly is the worst job in history.